A mature optimization program happens when optimization is not just treated as an activity, but at the end of the day, it's really treated as a process. Just to give you an example of how I've seen it inside some of the bigger brands and some of the most successful D2C brands, I've often seen experimentation becoming kind of the default for the design teams, for the copy teams, for the e-commerce teams, right? What happens with smaller brands sometimes is optimization is an activity. It's something that one person does. It's something that one department does. But when the brand starts thinking about optimization as a mindset more than an activity, that's where, you're kind of starting to see a more mature program. And in practical terms, what it typically looks like is you're going to get potentially a design team. And that design team, without being prompted by the marketing team, kind of knows when something they're designing should actually be tested. And then they are kind of the sponsor of an experiment. Maybe the experimentation setup still gets done by an experimentation team, but the design team sees, hey, this design, we're actually unsure which one is better. We have a couple versions. We have a couple hypotheses that supports these different designs, but we'd like to test those. So that's a great example of, okay, this was prompted by the design team. The design team came up with a couple different hypotheses, and essentially that ended up being added to the testing program. Same thing could happen with a merchandising team. Merchandising has a couple different products that they want to push. They're unsure which one will actually lead to the highest customer lifetime value. Maybe that's one of the goals, right? They want to make sure that first-time customers are coming back, and that becomes a merchandising strategy. And they want to know, okay, well, which products should we push if our goal is customer acquisition, but also customer retention? And they want to figure out which of the products actually would get people to be more likely to come back, right? Like that's a great example of, okay, now a merchandising team that sometimes is the same as the e-commerce team, sometimes a little separate, right? They may say, hey, we're going to test a couple different products targeted specifically to first-time returning customers. Then we're going to track that cohort and we'll get the answer as to which product is typically best to get people to come back after the first purchase. So that's another example. So I think, an experimentation program at the end of the day becomes, it's not like let's test to prove who's right, who's wrong. People never truly assume that, what they designed, what they build, or the strategy they're coming up with is the best strategy. They're willing to validate their assumptions. They're also a bit more detached towards should this win or should this lose. Sometimes something else that I've seen happen with immature programs at large companies is that, people are doing optimization to win. And obviously, look, let's not hide behind the fact that the reason why we're all doing conversion optimization, it's to make a brand more money. That is the end goal. That said, when the incentives are in the wrong place, so for example, there's this boss that says, hey, we need to do CRO, we need to have a lot of wins, and then the team below that person starts executing, running those tests, and their incentive is really just to get test wins at all cost. What happens is you end up getting cherry picking, right? Let's say you have a test that loses, then it's seen as bad. And that team is seen as maybe they're not doing their job properly, or the team feels like maybe they can't talk about their test losses as honestly as they should. They're not, put in a position where they have to learn from those test wins. They're put in a position where they kind of have to diminish the wins and only showcase the good. And obviously that just really hurts an entire CRO program as a whole, because then instead of looking at test results objectively, teams are trained to only really care about the wins, only talk about the good things happening, or to a worse extent, only try to talk about even bad tests in a way that frames it as positive, which no one comes out as a winner out of that. No one. It's cherry picking. You're trying to make the data talk in the way that, benefits, your job, because you kind of have no choice, because, this boss is really trying to just only care about the wins, and the leadership only cares about the wins. And if they don't see enough wins, they're going to cut the program. So that is a danger that happens in less mature programs, in less mature organizations. Whereas, the older organizations, right, I think leadership, or the most mature organizations, I should say, when it comes to CRO, they truly understand the importance of every test. And they're not just in it to win. They're in it, yes, to get an ROI, to make more money for sure. But they understand that achieving those goals of increased revenue, increased profit, increased ROI typically happens through some failures, through tests that did not create an uplift, and over time those do create more revenue. So yeah, long answer, but in short, those are really some of the big things that separates a mature with an immature program.